Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into digital methods.
Yeah, putting on our digital detective hats.
That's a great way to put it. So digital methods, I'm curious, what exactly are we talking about here?
Well, you can think of digital methods like research tools, I guess,
Okay.
using the massive amount of data online to understand how society and culture are changing.
So we're not just talking about like browsing the web, right?
Right.
It's more about using the raw data of the internet, like all those hyperlinks and timestamps,
Exactly.
even the words people search for,
Mm-hmm.
to uncover hidden patterns, almost like we're doing some kind of online investigation.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Okay, so what are some of the cool things that we can actually do with these digital methods?
Well, for instance, you can track the spread of the flu in real time
Whoa,
just by analyzing Google searches.
that's wild.
Or you can uncover regional differences in language use.
Like how people say soda, pop, or Coke.
Yeah, exactly like that. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
I'm already hooked.
Yeah.
I've also heard that digital methods can be used to study how Wikipedia edits reflect different cultural perspectives,
Absolutely.
like on historical events.
Yeah, especially for those really controversial topics.
I think that seems like a really powerful application.
Mhm.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. So take the Srebrenica massacre.
Okay.
Researchers have compared the articles on this event
Okay.
in different language versions of Wikipedia and found some really stark contrasts.
Like what?
Well, for example,
Yeah.
the Serbian version of the article uses the term massacre in the title,
Okay.
while the Bosnian version uses the term genocide.
Oh, wow.
And even the images used in the articles differ, reflecting these distinct cultural interpretations.
That's really interesting. So we're not just talking about like the bare facts of the event.
Right.
We're talking about how they're presented
Exactly.
and framed within like a larger cultural context.
Mhm.
That's super powerful. So before we get too deep into these fascinating rabbit holes,
Yeah.
can you tell me like what makes digital methods so unique
Okay.
compared to other research methods?
Well, in the humanities and social sciences, traditional methods
Hmm?
often rely on what we call digitized materials.
Like
Things like physical books that have been scanned,
Okay.
made available online, or,
photos of artwork that are now in a digital archive.
exactly, stuff that originated in the physical world.
Okay, so it was converted to a digital format.
Mm-hmm.
But digital methods focus on data that was like born digital.
Right. It was, we call that natively digital data.
I see. Okay.
So that includes things like hyperlinks and timestamps,
Yeah.
and even the order that things appear in your search results.
So it's like we're looking at the content, but we're also looking at the way the content exists
Exactly.
in the digital world. So we're looking at like, the metadata,
Right.
the context, the relationships between different pieces of information.
You got it.
Okay. I'm starting to see the difference here. And by analyzing these little digital traces,
Right.
you can learn a lot about how people behave,
Mm-hmm.
cultural trends, even how those platforms themselves work.
Yeah, you can really start to see the inner workings of these platforms.
Okay, speaking of platforms, one of the early examples of digital methods that I remember really catching people's attention was Google Flu Trends.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. It was groundbreaking.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, Google Flu Trends showed that you could accurately predict flu outbreaks.
Just based on Google searches?
Yeah, sometimes even before official health reports.
Yeah.
Just by tracking how often people were searching for flu-related terms.
So instead of waiting for like doctors to report cases,
Yeah,
you can actually see the flu spreading in real time.
exactly. And it has huge implications for public health officials.
I can imagine. That kind of early detection could be so valuable.
It could be huge.
And it just makes me wonder what other kinds of public health issues could be addressed with this kind of proactive approach.
Yeah, it's a really interesting area to think about.
What about like tracking the spread of misinformation about vaccines?
That's a great example.
Yeah, being able to identify where these harmful ideas are taking root
Mm-hmm.
could allow for like targeted interventions and educational campaigns
Right.
before they can cause real damage.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to another example.
Sure.
Earlier, you mentioned mapping regional language differences.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me more about that and what we've learned from studying it?
So researchers have created these maps
Okay.
showing where different terms for the same thing,
Well,
like, soda, pop, or Coke
Yeah.
are used most frequently across the U.S.
I've seen one of those maps.
Yeah.
It's amazing how clear the decisions are.
It's really interesting.
You can practically draw lines on a map and predict what people are going to call a soft drink
Right.
just based on where they live.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So what they did
Yeah.
is they compared these maps that they created with the results from online surveys.
Okay.
And they found that the survey data actually showed even starker regional divisions in language use
Oh, just
than the analysis of geotagged tweets did.
So even though they're both using online data, you're saying they were revealing slightly different aspects.
Yeah, and this is a really important point.
Why is that?
Well, it could be because of a number of different things, like, maybe the demographics of the people who use each platform are different,
Okay.
or the way each platform collects and processes that data is different.
So that's interesting.
It really just highlights that the method that you choose can influence the results you get.
Makes total sense.
And sometimes combining multiple methods might give you a richer, more nuanced understanding.
So it's good to have like a variety of tools in your toolbox
Exactly.
to approach research questions from all these different angles.
Yeah, exactly. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
It's exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into another fascinating case study.
Okay.
Earlier we talked about those Wikipedia edits.
Right.
Can you give me a specific example
Yeah.
of how those edits
Okay.
can reveal cultural perspectives?
Sure. Let's go back to the example of the Srebrenica massacre.
Okay.
Researchers compared the articles on this event
Yeah.
in different languages, and they found some striking differences.
Like what?
Well, as we mentioned before, the titles themselves reflect different interpretations. The Serbian version using the term massacre,
Okay.
while the Bosnian version using the term genocide.
Yeah, wow. So you're saying that just even those small changes in language
Yeah,
can really shape the way we understand the event.
absolutely. Yeah. And even the images that are used in the articles, they differ a lot too.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about, are these facts correct?
Right.
But it's also about how are those facts being presented
Exact.
and framed. That's really powerful.
Yeah. They're depicting different aspects of the event or even different victims, and that can really shape the reader's understanding and their emotional response.
And I'm wondering, can researchers go even deeper? Could they look at, where the editors are located? When did they make those edits? Even those discussions on the talk pages.
Oh, yeah. They do all of that.
Really?
They analyze all those digital traces to really gain a deeper, more nuanced understanding of how our memories of culture are shaped and contested online.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion here to reveal all the complexities of how we collectively understand history.
It's really fascinating.
It is. It's giving us a whole new way to study history, not just as like this fixed narrative, but as an evolving dialogue.
Exactly. And it's not just history. Digital methods can be applied to so many different fields.
Okay, I'm hooked. Now I really want to hear about how these methods are being used to study YouTube and Facebook.
Okay, yeah. YouTube, for instance, has been a major focus of digital methods research, especially when it comes to understanding the platform's recommendation algorithm.
So how do you even study something like that?
Well, one approach is what's called tearing down a platform, basically trying to reverse engineer those algorithms.
So it's like taking apart a clock
Yeah.
to see how all those gears and springs work together.
Right, exactly. So they have to analyze tons and tons of data looking for patterns in those recommendations that YouTube makes.
So it's not just about understanding how the platform works on like a technical level.
Right.
It's about understanding like the social and cultural implications of those technical choices.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where digital methods can really shine.
Okay, let's move on to Facebook.
Okay.
It's another platform that's been in the spotlight lately, especially when it comes to issues of privacy and data security.
Yeah, you're right. Facebook is so complex with billions of users, and it's a constantly evolving platform.
Right.
But researchers are finding really interesting ways to study this massive social network. Like what?
Well, by mapping networks of interlinked pages.
Yeah.
For example, you could map out all the pages that are related to climate change activism.
Okay.
And you could see how they're connected, who's influencing whom,
Okay.
and how information is flowing through that network.
And then by analyzing the engagement data, you can see what content is resonating.
Right, exactly.
So it's really about understanding, how information spreads and how these online communities form and evolve.
Exactly.
This is also fascinating, but I'm also starting to think about the challenges of studying something like Facebook.
Yeah.
I imagine it's not easy
Right.
to get your hands on the data that you need, especially with these big tech companies controlling so much information.
You're absolutely right. And, platforms change their APIs all the time
Right.
and those data access policies. So it can be a real challenge for researchers to keep up.
So it's a moving target.
It is.
Yeah.
And then also you have the issue of data ephemerality. Websites can disappear, social media posts get deleted.
Yeah.
Even entire platforms can vanish.
Overnight, practically. Yeah.
Okay, but so are there ways to, like, archive and preserve data, even if those platforms disappear?
Researchers have to be really creative in finding ways to access that data.
Okay.
Whether it's through, web scraping or using third-party tools.
It sounds like digital methods research takes a lot of adaptability and resourcefulness, like almost being a digital archaeologist.
That's a great analogy. And just like archaeologists, we have to be mindful of the context of our discoveries. Just because something exists online doesn't mean it's an accurate representation of reality.
Yeah, we're dealing with information that's filtered through the lens of those platforms, through the algorithms, and through all the people who are creating it and sharing it.
Exactly.
So it seems like digital methods researchers really need to be critical.
They do.
Of the data they're working with and transparent about those methods.
Absolutely.
Well said. Yeah. This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, it has been.
It feels like we're really just scratching the surface of this vast and exciting field. But before we move on, I do want to touch on something that's been on my mind. These ethical considerations.
Okay.
We're dealing with so much data about how people behave online. It's so important that we're not violating anyone's privacy or putting them at risk.
You're absolutely right. Informed consent is essential. Researchers have to be really clear about what data they're collecting, how they're using it, and what they're doing to protect people's anonymity.
Okay, so it sounds like digital methods research requires this really careful balance between pursuing knowledge and the responsibility to protect those people whose data we're studying.
It does. And that's a conversation we need to keep having, especially as the digital landscape evolves.
Well said. Now, I'm really excited to hear about how digital methods are being used to study X, and TikTok, but we'll save that for the next part of our deep dive.
So are you ready to explore those worlds of X and TikTok?
Absolutely. They feel like they've become central to so much of modern life, from news and politics and even social activism.
Yeah, you're right.
It's fascinating to think about how we can use digital methods to really understand their impact.
Okay, so let's start with X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
One of the key features that makes X so interesting for research is that retweet function.
A retweet, yeah.
Yeah, by analyzing those retweets and hashtags, researchers can create these chronologies of events as they unfold.
It's like we have a front row seat to history in the making.
Exactly.
Can you give me an example of how this has been used in practice?
Sure. So take the 2009 Iran election protests.
Okay.
Researchers were able to use Twitter data to actually track those protests as they spread, even when the Iranian government was trying to control the flow of information.
Oh, wow.
They could see what hashtags were gaining traction, who was retweeting whom, and how those protests were evolving over time.
That is powerful. But it also makes me wonder about the limitations of using social media data to understand real-world events.
Right.
Not everyone uses social media.
Right.
And those who do might not be a representative sample.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You have to be aware of those limitations and avoid overgeneralizing.
Okay.
But I think even with those caveats, digital methods can still provide really valuable insights that we wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Yeah. It's like having another piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
Another way of making sense of really complex events.
Okay, so are we ready to shift gears and talk about TikTok?
Yes.
Okay.
It feels like it's become like the platform of the moment.
Yeah.
Especially for, younger generations.
It really has.
So I'm curious, what are some of those unique challenges and opportunities that TikTok presents for digital methods research?
Well, TikTok is really fascinating because it's all about this this short form video content.
Okay.
And it's really all about the power of imitation. It's incredibly dynamic, really fast-paced, with trends emerging and disappearing really fast.
So how do researchers even, begin to study something that's constantly changing?
It requires a lot of flexibility and creativity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're looking at things like how audio memes, hashtags,
Yeah.
and trends spread on TikTok,
Mm-hmm.
and what that tells us about, about online community dynamics.
Okay.
They're looking at how users mimic each other's content, creating these really fascinating chains of shared ideas and behaviors.
Okay.
So TikTok has this unique ability to foster what we call imitation publics.
Okay, I like that, imitation publics. Can you break that down for me?
So basically, they're, where users mimic each other's content and create these really fascinating chains of shared trends and ideas.
Yeah.
And it's like a giant digital game of telephone.
Oh, I like one.
Where an idea starts in one place and evolves as it spreads.
Okay.
So it's not just about individual creators anymore. It's about this collective energy and creativity.
Right, so the community.
Of the community as a whole.
As a whole, yeah.
And by analyzing, the sounds and the hashtags and those trends that are shared on TikTok, researchers can begin to understand how content goes viral.
Okay.
And how these imitation publics are really shaping cultural norms and values, especially among those younger generations.
This reminds me of how, trends and ideas have always spread through imitation.
Yeah.
Even before the internet. If you think about fashion trends.
Yeah, you're right.
Slang, music.
Right.
It's always been there.
Yeah, it's this fundamental part of human culture.
Yeah, and now TikTok is just like amplifying it and accelerating it.
Exactly, and it's making it more visible and easier to study.
Yeah.
So it gives us a glimpse into these mechanisms of cultural evolution in real time.
Okay, so we've talked about X and TikTok separately. But what about research that that looks at how information flows across multiple platforms?
That's a great point. Some people argue that just focusing on individual platforms can give us a limited understanding of how information really spreads.
Right, because people don't live in these silos.
Right.
They move seamlessly from platform to platform.
They do all the time.
So, how do researchers track that movement of information across such a complex digital landscape?
Oh, it's definitely challenging.
Yeah.
But there are tools and techniques that researchers are using.
Okay.
One approach is to use hyperlink analysis software.
Okay.
And these tools allow researchers to map those connections between different websites and social media platforms. So you can see which ones are linking to each other, how often they're shared, and what kinds of networks they form.
So we're talking about creating like a map of the digital ecosystem.
Exactly.
Showing how that information flows from platform to platform.
That's a great way to think about it.
Okay, I like that.
And by understanding those connections, researchers can start to see how events and issues are framed differently across platforms, how different audiences are targeted, and how those online campaigns gain momentum or even fizzle out.
That's interesting.
So, there's a lot to learn there.
This is all really fascinating, but I keep coming back to this challenge of getting access to data.
Right.
Especially with those, big tech companies controlling so much information.
Yeah, you're hitting on a really big challenge in the field.
Okay.
Platforms are constantly changing. Their APIs and data access policies and even their whole business models, making it really difficult for researchers to keep up.
Yeah, it sounds like a constantly moving target.
It is, yeah. And data ephemerality is another major issue.
Right.
Websites disappear, posts get deleted, and platforms can vanish practically overnight.
So how do you even begin to, how do digital methods researchers even cope with this this ever-shifting digital landscape?
Adaptability and resourcefulness are essential.
Okay.
Researchers have to be creative in finding ways to access that data.
Okay.
Whether it's through web scraping, using third-party tools, or even partnering with those platforms themselves.
It sounds like a tough job.
It can be. Yeah, it can be.
Okay, all this talk about challenges in data access makes me think about another really important consideration.
Okay.
Those ethics of digital methods research.
Right.
We're talking about all this data, tons of data about people's online behavior.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we're not violating anyone's privacy.
Absolutely.
Or putting them at risk.
You're raising a really crucial point.
Okay.
It's something that every digital methods researcher needs to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Informed consent is paramount. Researchers need to be clear about what data they're collecting, how they're going to use it, and what steps they're taking to protect people's anonymity.
So it's not just about can we get the data?
Right.
And
Yeah.
can we analyze the data?
Right.
It's about, what are our responsibilities
Exactly.
to the people behind the data?
It's this complex balancing act.
It is.
And digital methods research really requires us to navigate these ethical considerations carefully and to be transparent
Okay.
about our methods and motivations.
Well said.
It's an ongoing conversation and a responsibility that we can't take lightly.
Okay, so we've talked about the methods, the challenges, and the ethics of digital methods research.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in, but it's really fascinating stuff.
It is.
I have to ask,
Yeah.
what does all of this mean for the average person?
Okay.
Why should they care about this kind of research?
That's a great question, and one we should be asking all the time as researchers.
Yeah.
Digital methods are really giving us these new ways of seeing the world around us,
Okay.
helping us understand how technology is shaping our lives, how information spreads, how communities are formed, and how power dynamics play out online.
It's like we're getting this new set of lenses
Yeah.
to view the digital landscape,
You got it.
to see these patterns and connections that we might not have noticed before.
And these insights, they have real implications. They can help us make more informed decisions about how we use technology,
Okay.
how we protect our privacy,
Okay.
and how we engage with this online world.
Like, for instance, if we can understand how algorithms work,
Yeah,
we can be more critical consumers of the information that we see online.
exactly.
And if we can recognize the tactics of, online manipulation, we can be less susceptible
Right.
to propaganda and misinformation.
Yeah, it's all about empowering us to become more informed, more critical, and more engaged citizens in this digital age.
Yeah, it's so important.
And as the digital world continues to evolve, so too will this field of digital methods research.
Okay.
New platforms will emerge, new technologies will develop, and new ethical challenges will arise, for sure.
Yeah. It feels like we're really living in this time of unprecedented change and innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And digital methods research is helping us to make sense of it all.
It is. It is.
So as we move to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to explore this idea of digital methods
Mm-hmm.
as this tool
Okay.
for, not just understanding the present,
Yeah.
but also anticipating the future.
Yeah.
Can we really use these methods to predict what's coming next?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? Can we actually predict the future using digital methods?
It feels like we've been talking about it all episode. Like we've established that digital methods can show us what's happening online
Right.
and even how that's impacting the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So is it really that much of a leap to say we can use it to predict what's coming next?
I don't think so. It's all about recognizing patterns and then understanding how those patterns might play out in the future.
So like with the Google flu trends example,
Exactly.
we saw how tracking those searches for flu symptoms could predict actual outbreaks.
Right, and that's just one example.
So what if we applied that same logic to tracking misinformation? Like what if we could see where those harmful ideas are taking root
Yeah.
and actually intervene before they cause real damage in the offline world?
That's the idea, early intervention.
Okay, so beyond public health, what other kinds of predictions could we make using this kind of data?
Well, think about how we could analyze patterns in social media conversations
Okay.
to maybe understand those early warning signs of social unrest or even predict the emergence of new cultural trends.
Oh, so instead of just reacting to events after they happen, we could actually get ahead of the curve.
Exactly. It's a proactive approach.
And that could be valuable for so many fields.
Right.
Like marketing and politics and even disaster response.
Absolutely.
Wow, this is pretty mind-blowing.
I know, right? It's all about the power of data.
Yeah, it feels like we're not just passively observing the digital world anymore. Like we're actually shaping it.
I think you're right.
Digital methods is still a pretty young field, right?
Yeah, relatively young.
But it's already having a big impact
It is.
on how we understand the world.
And that impact is only going to grow as we have more data available online.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how digital methods can help us understand,
Mm-hmm.
Not just the internet itself, but also all those social and cultural trends
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
are shaping our world today.
And the worlds of tomorrow.
Exactly.
So as you continue to navigate this digital landscape, keep in mind what we talked about today.
Yeah.
Be mindful of the data that's out there, how it's being used,
Okay.
and stay curious.
I love that. You never know what amazing insights you might uncover. So to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into digital methods.
Thanks for listening.